If your mind feels scattered, anxious, or constantly pulled by impulses, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were never taught how to train it. In this video, I'll break down 4 ancient geisha principles inspired by Kiharu Nakamura that don't motivate you. They reprogram how your mind works. This is discipline, not inspiration. Stay with me until the end. One of these principles can quietly change how you think forever. Principle 1. Stillness before action. I start with the foundation of the geisha mind. Before reacting to anything, I consciously stop and create space. Stillness is not hesitation born from fear or uncertainty. It's control exercised with precision and awareness. This was the first principle I learned studying the way geishas moved through the world, and it completely shattered my Western conditioning that equated speed with strength, that valued immediate reaction as a sign of confidence and capability. I had spent my entire life believing that the fastest responder wins, that hesitation is weakness, that real power comes from the ability to act instantaneously without pause or consideration. But watching how geishas operated revealed something profoundly different. True power resides in the space between stimulus and response, in that microsecond gap where consciousness can enter and choice becomes possible instead of automatic reaction dominating every interaction. When I pause deliberately before responding, I decide consciously who I am in that moment rather than letting circumstances decide for me. This is not a passive act of indecision or paralysis. It's the most active thing a human being can do. Consciously choosing your response instead of being unconsciously controlled by conditioned patterns. Most people live their entire lives on impulse, bouncing from reaction to reaction like pinballs in a machine, never stopping to ask, is this who I want to be right now? Their emotional states are completely at the mercy of external circumstances. Someone criticizes them, and they immediately defend. Someone provokes them, and they instantly attack. Something frustrates them, and they automatically complain. They are essentially sophisticated stimulus response machines, no different from Pavlov's dogs salivating at bells, except the bells are criticism, traffic, disappointing news, or any of 1,000 daily triggers. Geishas lived on intention rather than impulse, and that fundamental difference created an entirely different quality of existence. Every movement was deliberate, every word was chosen, every facial expression was consciously composed. This wasn't fakeness or performance in the negative sense. It was artistry applied to life itself, the recognition that you are always creating yourself through your actions, and you might as well create consciously rather than unconsciously. A geisha entering a room didn't just walk in however her body felt like moving that day. She moved with specific intention about the energy she wanted to bring, the impression she wanted to create, the response she wanted to evoke. Not manipulation, cultivation. The difference is subtle, but absolutely crucial. Manipulation seeks to control others. Cultivation seeks to control yourself. The practice itself is deceptively simple, but requires consistent effort that most people abandon after days. When something happens that would normally trigger immediate reaction, someone says something offensive, you receive bad news, you feel an uncomfortable emotion rising. You pause for exactly 3 conscious breaths before responding in any way. 3 full breath cycles where you do nothing but observe the impulse to react without acting on it. In those 9 seconds, roughly 3 seconds per breath, something miraculous happens. The reactive energy peaks and begins to naturally subside on its own, and the space for conscious choice opens like a door you never noticed was there. The first 100 times I tried this, it felt agonizing. Every cell in my body screamed to react immediately, to defend, to attack, to do something, anything, except just breathe and observe. But after weeks of consistent practice, something fundamental shifted in my neurology and psychology. The gap between stimulus and response, which initially felt forced and artificial, became natural and automatic. I had created a new automatic response, which was to pause before responding. Now, when something provocative happens, my immediate instinct is stillness rather than reaction, observation rather than engagement, consciousness rather than unconsciousness. And from that place of stillness, my responses are infinitely more effective, more aligned with who I actually want to be, more likely to create the outcomes I genuinely desire. Stillness before action isn't hesitation or weakness. It's the foundational practice that makes everything else possible, the soil in which all other disciplines grow. Principle 2, identity before habit. I don't try to change habits first anymore because I learned that's backwards and destined to fail. I change how I see myself at the deepest level, and the habits follow naturally from that shifted identity. Geishas trained identity before behavior, understanding intuitively what modern psychology is only now confirming. Lasting change happens from the inside out, never outside in. When you try to change behavior while maintaining the same identity, you're essentially asking someone who sees themselves as not a morning person to wake up at 5 a.m. consistently, or asking someone who identifies as naturally lazy to suddenly become disciplined. The identity and the behavior are in constant warfare, and identity always wins eventually because it's deeper, more fundamental, more connected to your sense of self. When I act from identity rather than willpower, discipline becomes completely natural instead of forced. I don't have to force myself to do things that aligned people do. I simply become someone who acts differently at the identity level, and the behaviors emerge organically. Before, I would wake up and have an exhausting internal negotiation. Should I meditate? I don't feel like it, but I should. But I'm tired. But I promised myself. That negotiation burns willpower like fuel, and eventually the tank empties and you collapse back into old patterns. Now, I simply am someone who meditates every morning. There's no negotiation, no internal debate, no willpower expenditure. It's like asking, should I brush my teeth? The question doesn't even arise because it's so deeply embedded in my identity that skipping it would feel like betraying myself at a fundamental level. The shift requires changing the language you use about yourself, moving from I'm trying to I am. Instead of I'm trying to become more disciplined, I started saying I am a disciplined person who is still learning. Instead of I want to be someone who reads daily, I said I am a reader. The difference seems trivial linguistically, but psychologically it's massive. One positions the desired state as external and future, something you're reaching toward but never quite grasping. The other positions it as current reality that you're simply expressing more fully. When you say, I am, your brain begins looking for evidence to confirm that identity. And suddenly, you notice all the small ways you already embody it, which reinforces it, which makes you embody it more, creating an upward spiral instead of the downward spiral of, I'm trying but failing. Geishas understood this implicitly through their training structure. From the moment a young girl entered the okiya, she was treated as a geisha in training, not as a regular girl who was trying to learn geisha skills. The identity came first, embedded through titles, clothing, expectations, environment, everything. She wore the clothes of her new identity. She was addressed by her geisha name. She was surrounded by others who reflected that identity back to her constantly. Her behavior then emerged from that firmly established identity rather than being forced onto an unchanged identity. Western culture does the opposite. We try to change behavior while leaving identity untouched, wondering why it's so hard and why we keep reverting to old patterns within weeks or months. The practical application is surprisingly straightforward, but requires honesty about who you actually want to become, not who you think you should want to become. First, clearly define the identity. I am someone who has mastery over my attention and emotional state. Then, gather evidence through small actions that confirm this identity. Every time you choose presence over distraction, that's evidence. Every time you pause before reacting, that's evidence. Every time you maintain stillness under pressure, that's evidence. Your brain keeps a running tally of identity-confirming actions, and when the evidence accumulates beyond a certain threshold, the identity solidifies and behavior becomes automatic. I don't force myself to be disciplined anymore because I genuinely see myself as a disciplined person. And disciplined people do disciplined things not through force, but through natural expression of who they are. Principle 3. Emotional silence. I learned that showing emotion impulsively gives it power over me and over the situation I'm in. This was counterintuitive to everything Western culture had taught me about authenticity and being real and expressing yourself. I grew up believing that holding back emotion was repression, that it would poison you from the inside, that healthy people immediately expressed whatever they felt. But geishas mastered expression by mastering restraint first. They understood that the ability to show emotion skillfully requires first having the capacity to not show it at all. It's like a musician learning silence and dynamics before attempting complex performances. You can't play softly if you only know how to play loud, and you can't express emotion with precision if you can only express it reflexively and automatically. When I don't react emotionally to provocations or difficulties, I don't lose energy that I'll need later. Every emotional reaction is an energy expenditure, sometimes massive, and most of us walk around completely bankrupt energetically because we spend ourselves reacting to every little thing that crosses our path. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you rage for 10 minutes. That's energy gone. Your boss criticizes you and you spend the afternoon in defensive internal dialogue. That's energy gone. You see something on social media that offends you and you write an angry comment. That's energy gone. Geishas conserved their emotional energy like precious resources, spending it only when it served a specific purpose, never wastefully or reactively. This wasn't coldness. It was efficiency and strategic awareness that energy is finite and must be allocated wisely. Silence becomes psychological strength that others can feel but can't quite articulate or understand. When you maintain emotional silence in situations where others expect reaction, something shifts in the power dynamics. You become unreadable, unpredictable, someone who cannot be easily manipulated through emotional triggering. People are accustomed to pushing buttons and getting predictable responses. When the buttons don't work anymore, they lose their leverage. I noticed this in conflicts. When I stopped showing anger or hurt or defensiveness, the other person's energy would spike briefly, trying to provoke the expected response, then deflate when it didn't come. My silence wasn't passive. It was actively powerful, creating a vacuum that others rushed to fill, often revealing themselves completely while I revealed nothing. The practice is distinct from suppression, which is pushing emotion down violently where it festers. Emotional silence is acknowledging the emotion fully, feeling it completely in your body, but consciously choosing not to express it externally or act from it. It's the difference between pretending you're not angry, suppression, and feeling the anger fully while maintaining a calm exterior, mastery. When someone provokes me now, I feel the anger arise, the heat, the tension, the impulse to strike back. But I also feel myself observing that anger from a slight distance, interested in it, but not consumed by it. The anger exists, but doesn't control my face, my voice, my actions. And something remarkable happens. The anger, when fully felt but not expressed, burns through faster and cleaner than anger that's either suppressed or explosively expressed. Geishas practiced this through rigorous training where they maintained perfect composure while experiencing intense emotions internally. A discipline that served them in their professional lives where they needed to be responsive to guests without being reactive to provocations or difficulties. I adopted a simplified version. In any emotionally charged situation, my face and body remain neutral regardless of what's happening inside, until I consciously decide an emotional display would serve my purposes. This isn't manipulation. It's sovereignty over your own expression, rather than being an open book that everyone can read and therefore control. The world doesn't need to see every emotion you feel. In fact, your effectiveness in the world often increases dramatically when you reveal less, conserve more, and express only what's strategic rather than everything that's automatic. Principle 4. Refinement over speed. I stopped rushing improvement and chasing dramatic transformations overnight because I learned that approach always leads to burnout and regression. For years, I was addicted to intensity. Crash diets, extreme workout programs, aggressive self-improvement plans that promised to reshape me completely in 30 or 90 days. I would launch into these programs with maximum force, feeling virtuous and powerful for days or weeks, then inevitably collapse back to baseline or worse when the intensity became unsustainable. Geishas believed refinement beats intensity every single time, understanding that mastery is built through microscopic improvements repeated over years and decades, not through heroic efforts that flame out quickly. A geisha would practice the same shamisen. Phrase 10,000 times, each repetition slightly more refined than the last, until the phrase became transcendent, not through trying harder, but through trying more precisely. When I refine one small thing every day with obsessive attention to detail, my mind rewires quietly without drama or burnout. This is the opposite of everything social media teaches about self-improvement, where transformation must be visible, dramatic, shareable, inspiring to others. But real transformation happens in the invisible micro-adjustments that accumulate compound interest over months until one day you look up and realize you're fundamentally different, though you can't point to any single moment when the change happened. I started with something absurdly small, refining how I placed my attention for the first 60 seconds after waking. Not a whole morning routine, not meditation for an hour, just 60 seconds of conscious attention placement. Day 1 was messy, day 30 was slightly cleaner, day 90 it was becoming automatic. Day 365, it had changed my entire relationship with consciousness and attention. The geisha approach to refinement had specific characteristics that made it effective where intensity-based approaches fail catastrophically. First, it was sustainable indefinitely. You can refine the same movement or phrase or skill every day for 50 years without burning out, because refinement doesn't deplete you the way intensity does. Second, it created intrinsic motivation, because the subtle improvements themselves became satisfying, creating a positive feedback loop where progress fueled more practice, which created more progress. Third, it avoided the boom-bust cycle of intense effort, followed by collapse and guilt. There was no collapse because there was never unsustainable intensity, just steady refinement that became the baseline way of operating. I applied this principle to every area I wanted to change, always asking, what's the smallest refinement I can make today? Rather than, what's the biggest change I can force? For physical training, instead of destroying myself in the gym for 90 minutes, then skipping the next week, I did 15 minutes daily of refined movement where every rep was perfect, slower, more controlled, more conscious than the day before. For learning skills, instead of marathon study sessions followed by days off, I practiced 25 minutes daily with complete focus on refinement of technique rather than volume of practice. For relationships, instead of grand gestures occasionally, I refined small daily interactions. The quality of my listening, the precision of my words, the consciousness of my presence, making each slightly better than the previous day's version. The results were paradoxical and powerful. By slowing down and refining instead of speeding up and forcing, I actually progressed faster and more sustainably than I ever had through intensity-based approaches. After 6 months of daily refinement, my skills had compounded to levels that would have taken years of inconsistent, intense effort. And more importantly, there was zero chance of regression because the changes were neurologically deep and identity level rather than superficial and willpower-based. Geishas spent decades refining because they understood something Western culture has forgotten. Refinement is not the slow path. It's the only path that actually reaches mastery. Intensity might take you further faster initially, but it's a sprinting strategy applied to an ultramarathon, guaranteeing you'll collapse long before the finish line. Refinement is the pace you can maintain until mastery, and then beyond mastery into artistry, and beyond artistry into transcendence, one microscopic improvement at a time, forever. Principle 5. Presence as discipline. I train presence like a muscle that needs daily exercise and progressive overload, not like a mystical state that descends randomly. For geishas, presence was power. Incarnate. Not personality, not charisma, not charm in the superficial sense, but the tangible ability to be completely here, completely now, completely undivided in attention. This was their competitive advantage in a world full of entertainers and performers. Anyone could sing or dance adequately, but very few could command a room simply by being utterly present within it. I used to think presence was something you either had or didn't have, a genetic gift like height or bone structure. But studying the geisha path revealed it's a trainable skill like any other. Perhaps the most trainable and highest leverage skill available to human beings, yet almost completely ignored in Western education and development. When I'm fully present without my attention scattered across past and future, distractions lose their authority over me completely. This wasn't theoretical. I tested it ruthlessly in the most distraction-rich environments I could find. Sitting in a coffee shop with my phone, face up on the table, practicing maintaining attention on a single task while notifications appeared. Initially impossible, gradually manageable, eventually easy as the presence muscle strengthened. The notifications didn't stop. The distractions didn't disappear from the environment, but my relationship to them fundamentally changed. They became like rain hitting a waterproof jacket, present in the environment but unable to penetrate and affect the interior. Before training presence, every notification was an immediate hijacking of attention. After training presence, notifications existed in my peripheral awareness without commanding the center. The training methodology I developed from geisha principles was brutally simple and progressively challenging. Start with 1 minute of undivided attention on a single object. A candle flame, your breath, a spot on the wall, anything that provides a clear anchor for attention. When attention wanders, and it will within seconds initially, you gently return it without judgment or frustration. That's 1 rep. Do this for 60 seconds daily for 1 week, then increase to 2 minutes the next week, adding 1 minute weekly until reaching 20 minutes of sustainable, undivided attention. Most people fail in week 2 or 3 because it's more difficult than any physical exercise. Your mind will generate every possible excuse, distraction, rationalization for why you should stop, or why this isn't working, or why you should check something. Immediately. Geishas trained presence through their art forms, which served as vehicles for attention development more than artistic expression for its own sake. The tea ceremony wasn't primarily about making good tea. It was about maintaining perfect presence through every micro movement of a 45-minute ritual, where any lapse in attention was immediately visible. The shamisen practice wasn't primarily about musical skill. It was about sustaining undivided attention on sound production for hours, until presence became the default state rather than the exceptional state. I adopted this approach by choosing mundane daily activities as presence training grounds. Washing dishes became a presence exercise where I felt the temperature of water, the texture of soap, the movement of hands with complete attention. Walking became presence training where I felt each footfall, noticed each breath, observed surroundings without internal narration. Eating became presence practice where I tasted each. Bite fully instead of shoveling food while scrolling. After 6 months of treating presence as a trainable discipline rather than a random occurrence, my baseline state had shifted fundamentally and measurably. Tasks that previously took an hour of distracted effort now took 25 minutes of focused work. Conversations that used to leave me drained energized me because I was fully present rather than partially engaged while planning my next response. Anxiety decreased dramatically because anxiety lives in the gap between present reality and imagined future, and as present strengthened, that gap collapsed. When you're genuinely here now, there's no mental space for anxiety about what might happen later. The irony is profound. By training the ability to be fully present, you gain more control over both future outcomes through focused, effective action, and past experiences through being fully present when they occur, so they're richer and more memorable than you ever could through constantly thinking about future and past. Presence isn't passivity or checked-out hippie philosophy. It's the ultimate performance enhancement, the foundation that makes everything else more effective, more efficient, more alive. Principle 6. Discipline without violence. I don't attack my mind anymore with harsh self-criticism, brutal internal dialogue, or violent self-improvement tactics. For years, I approached discipline like warfare against myself. If I failed to wake up early, I called myself pathetic. If I broke a diet, I labeled myself weak and disgusting. If I didn't hit my goals, I engaged in savage internal beatdowns that would be considered psychological abuse if done to another person. I thought this harshness was necessary fuel for change, that being soft on myself would lead to complacency and regression. But geishas disciplined themselves gently, consistently, relentlessly over decades, understanding something profound that Western hustle culture completely misses. Violence creates resistance, gentleness creates sustainability, and only sustainable discipline produces genuine transformation that lasts beyond temporary willpower spikes. When discipline is calm and patient rather than aggressive, it lasts indefinitely, without burnout or rebellion. Violent discipline creates internal civil war, where part of you is trying to force another part to comply. And this warfare is exhausting, unsustainable, and ultimately counterproductive because the oppressed part eventually rebels with equal violence. I experienced this countless times: brutal workout regimen leading to injury or complete cessation, extreme diet leading to binge eating, harsh productivity system leading to total collapse into procrastination. The pattern was always the same: intensity, brief results, mounting resistance, sudden collapse, guilt, repeat. Gentle discipline operates on completely different mechanics. Instead of forcing compliance, you invite cooperation from all parts of yourself, acknowledging resistance with compassion rather than attacking it with aggression. When discipline becomes violent and self-punishing, it collapses under its own weight eventually and inevitably. This isn't theoretical. It's observable in every fitness center in January, where people attack their bodies violently for weeks before disappearing, in every extreme diet that ends in guilty binge eating, in every brutal productivity system that leads to burnout. Violence is simply unsustainable as a long-term strategy for anything, including self-improvement. The body and mind have natural rebellion mechanisms that activate when violence is applied, even self-directed violence. It's a survival mechanism designed to protect the organism from harm, and it cannot distinguish between external violence and internal violence. When you attack yourself, your own protective systems activate against you, creating the exact resistance you're trying to overcome through the attack. Geisha discipline was characterized by gentleness in approach combined with unwavering consistency in execution. Never harsh, never punishing, but absolutely relentless in continuation day after day, year after year. If a young Maiko failed in her dance practice, the response wasn't verbal abuse or punishment. It was gentle correction and immediate return to practice, with the implicit understanding that mastery comes through 10,000 patient repetitions, not through suffering or self-flagellation. The standard was non-negotiable, but the path to meeting it was gentle and humane. I adopted this by establishing absolute consistency in my practices, while eliminating all harshness from the internal dialogue surrounding them. When I missed my morning practice, instead of "you're pathetic and weak," the response became "noted. What support do I need to make this easier tomorrow?" The standard didn't lower, but the approach became collaborative rather than combative. practical difference is transformative. I now maintain disciplines that have lasted years, which previously lasted weeks, not through increased willpower, but through decreased internal violence. My meditation practice isn't maintained by calling myself weak when I skip it. It's maintained by gently returning to it the next day without drama or self-punishment, treating each day as independent rather than part of a streak that breaking would require guilt and shame. My physical training isn't sustained by hating my body into submission. It's sustained by appreciating what my body can do and gently, consistently asking it to do slightly more. My work discipline isn't powered by fear of being worthless if I'm unproductive. It's powered by genuine interest in refinement and appreciation for the privilege of engaging in meaningful work. Discipline without violence is the ultimate efficiency. All energy goes toward the practice itself rather than being wasted on internal warfare. Self-punishment, guilt, shame, and rebellion. The geishas understood what I finally learned. The tortoise doesn't beat the hare through intensity or violence, but through gentle, consistent, relentless forward movement that never stops, never burns out, and never needs to recover from self-inflicted wounds. If this way of thinking resonates with you, stay close. This channel isn't about noise. It's about silent mastery. Subscribe and walk this path with me.